Now, before I get into the absolutely monumental UFC 200 and the podcast and my predictions, I need to address the travesty that turned out to be the cancellation of Global Warriors 3 Night of Champions, which I was actually playing a role in. I was designing all the graphics and helping to put things forward and kind of shaping the front end imagery of the fights. I was very much looking forward to the event until, with less than a week to go, the OAC headline, the Ontario Athletic Commission headlined by Ken Haishi, canceled the event. He initially had forced the promoter to push it off a month from May to June. They complied to help with licensing issues and getting fights sanctioned. And then Ken Haishi and the OAC, in the week leading up to the event, canceled the event, citing various health or safety concerns, talking about fighters that have been inactive for the last couple of years in MMA, fighting other guys who have been active. Yet it was really borderline bullshit ideology as far as the OAC is concerned, and that's the sad part. And if they're not going to let fighters fight and let promoters promote and put together events, as they pretty much are shutting down MMA in Ontario as we know it, these fighters aren't going to be active, and they're taking away opportunities for Ontario MMA to grow, for fighters to fight, for fans to go enjoy the events, for promotions to grow. They took money out of the pocket of a man that I worked with on this event, and my heart goes out to him, and for all the work he put in, for all the other individuals I worked with as well, everything they put into this show to make it go into the fighters and everyone else, and to have it taken away by some, let's keep things PG here, by Mr. Haishi and the OAC is just despicable and unfortunate. And he needs to go, and it's really, you'll see a lot of articles floating around. You get a lot more information I just provided to you, but nonetheless, it was a terrible, terrible scenario, and I hope in the future something will come about, and I hope to be part of the Global Warriors name going forward as far as designing things and producing posters and graphics and stuff to help get local MMA, Ontario's MMA scene back up and running. So, for all those involved, you know who you are. Stay strong. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and in this episode of the show, we are breaking down the UFC 200 event, which will go down on July 9th, 2016, and feature 5 main card fights, which are awesome. 12 incredible fights top to bottom. I will give you all of my main card predictions, as always, on this episode of the show. My remaining 7 preliminary breakdowns will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Now, we have 2 huge shows prior to UFC 200, with the Ultimate Fighter 23 finale taking place on the Friday, and UFC Fight Night 90 on the Thursday. And of course, we also have UFN 91 taking place on the following Wednesday. Lots of fighting going on. Nothing has transpired as of recording this. You can buy your bet packs. Check out on the website at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Check out my predictions. As always, for everything, check out the panel's predictions. Go and vote in the polls for UFC 200. Tell us who you think is going to win. I want to see those numbers, especially for the main event. Eclipse, be the highest voted on as all time. That would be fantastic. So certainly check that out. Follow me on Facebook, on Twitter at KO_predictions. And enough said at this point. We've got some fantastic fights to get to. So let's get to that first main card prediction. The first fight of the night takes place in the UFC's heavyweight division and will feature the former champion and number 2 ranked Cain Velasquez, 13-2-0, taking on the 7th ranked Travis Hoppa Browne with a current record of 18 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw. Now, as I said, Cain is a 2-time champion. He realizes we have a new champion in Stipe Miocic, a fighter he has not fought before, so the door is certainly open for him to work his way back into title contention. The last time he lost his title, which was to Junior Dos Santos, he won 4 fights in a row to regain the title, including 3 wins by TKO, so certainly he can be a motivated fighter. We'll see if that holds true here. For Travis Browne, the last time he had an opportunity to win a high-profile fight and put himself directly in line for a shot at the title, he lost to Fabricio Verdum in pretty convincing fashion. Ultimately, he didn't get the title shot. The pressure is on once again, and he's shown a pattern of late, picking up low-level wins. He's alternated wins and losses over his last handful of fights. Low-level wins or lower-level wins against Brendan Schaub and Matt Mitrione, only to follow this up by losing to more recognizable names in higher profile fights. Physically, Browne will be 10 to 15 pounds heavier than Cain, who's a lighter heavyweight. Browne at 6'7" will be 6 inches taller, but only have a slight 2-inch reach advantage. They are the same age. Now, Velasquez is returning to action after a 13-month layoff, but before he fought Verdum, he had about a 20-month break, so he's had some issues with injury and inactivity of late, so it's not something it's not always a good thing, but certainly it's not something he's unfamiliar with. Now, both fighters, when you look at their records, they have big knockout numbers. Browne, 14 of his 18 wins have come by knockout. For Cain, it's 11 of 13. Now, Cain does it with volume and accumulation. He just keeps attacking guys and putting shots on them until they can no longer, until they basically just crumble and can't handle it anymore. For Browne, he's more of a big power puncher, a power striker where he hits you with a couple big strikes, and that's kind of the end of it. Some unorthodox knockouts, if you look back on his record, we saw him spamming those front kicks to take out Alistair Overeem, the eye poke and then ground and pound damage against Matt Mitrione, the Superman punch to take out Stefan Struve, and a couple of those defensive elbows against Josh Barnett and Gabriel Gonzaga, if you couldn't see me, I'm doing the elbow motion, obviously off camera. And, some odd knockouts. But you look at going back to Cain with his death by accumulation style of striking. 6.22 strikes landed per minute. That's correct. 6.22. Those are bantamweight numbers. Those are numbers that you see guys like Nick Diaz or Nate Diaz putting up. And this is Cain at a heavyweight. Those are big numbers. And the big thing is he limits his opponents to 2.35 strikes landed absorbed per minute. They don't hit him very much. He gets hit. He got hit a lot in the Verdum fight, absolutely, but he does a great job of hitting his opponent a lot and not taking a lot of damage on the other side of things. In his 2 wins over Junior Dos Santos, he landed 234 strikes in a little less than 10 rounds. That's damn impressive. A little less than 9 rounds, actually. Against Verdum in a losing effort, he landed 88 strikes. He still put it on. Verdum put a lot of, hit him a lot, just couldn't ultimately get the shut-off one that put him away. He was able to stop both Bigfoot and Big Nog with power strikes. Again, we were kind of aware of their chin scenario, so it's not exactly like they're guys that had ironclad chins when he was putting them down. In addition to his power and his striking, is his takedown game, which adds to his non-stop pressure. 5.24 takedowns at his 46% completion rate, and the reason his completion rate is so low is he just keeps driving. He doesn't take you down once; he's just going to keep coming forward and looking for more. He landed 4 takedowns in his loss to Verdum. He had 13 in his 2 fights against Junior Dos Santos, and his ground and pound, again, it's relentless. He gets on top, he accumulates a lot of strikes, and really puts it on his opponent. Now, the big thing, again, with Cain is when he shoots on Travis Browne, he has to watch Browne's elbows. Browne is going to look for those elbows, whatever the heck you want to call them, against Barnett and against Gabriel Gonzaga, where he had him against the cage, stalled out the takedown attempt, and started doing some damage. And we know Cain has been a little bit chinny in fights. Going way back, Czech Congo rocked him several times in that matchup. Of course, Junior TKO'd him, and Verdum hurt him a number of times in that fight. So it's not like Cain has an ironclad chin where he can walk through anything. He does take damage, and it does pay dividends. If Browne, he's got a long reach, he's a big, tall man, and that height will add to the reach advantage, even though the overall numbers isn't that big. If he can counter Cain while he's coming forward, he could easily knock him out, use that forward pressure and that forward motion, and then boom, pop him one on the chin. Cain could go down, absolutely. On the other side, I think durability for Browne's not always, been a big thing for him. There's some question marks there. He gets hit a lot, 3.63 strikes landed per minute, actually more than he hits his opponents. We saw Overeem hurt him. We saw Andrei Arlovsky hurt him several times before knocking him out, and of course, Bigfoot put him down as well. When you go back to Browne's fight with Verdum, he had a lot of trouble with the pace that Verdum set, a lot of trouble with how he stayed in his face the entire matchup. Cain's low stature, the way I look at it, is going to allow him both to get in for his strikes and look to get underneath of Browne's hips and take him down. We saw some takedowns by Brendan Shaw. Verdum had some takedowns against Travis Browne again. And Browne is not the type of fighter who's going to do well off his back against a top position pressure that Cain Velasquez is going to bring. I also think Velasquez is going to find success once he gets past the reach, gets on the inside, takes the length of Browne out of the equation, and starts landing big shots. Browne, being a taller man, that overhand punch is going to pay dividends. Browne tends to hold his hands a little bit low, and with Cain's short combinations and really channeling his punches, chambering his punches well, I think that's going to show up here. I think Cain's speed is going to help him as well. Browne's cardio is also a major issue. If this fight goes beyond the first round and Cain is able to really push him, I think that helps Velasquez that much more. And my prediction is Cain Velasquez to defeat Travis Browne by TKO. Fight number 2 on the main card takes place in the UFC's featherweight division and will be for the interim featherweight title, as the former champion and number 1 ranked Jose Aldo, 25 wins and 2 losses, takes on the former lightweight champion, number 2 ranked Frankie the Answer Edgar, 19-4-1, in a rematch in a fight that should be fantastic. Aldo, he is taking his first post-title fight matchup since losing his title to Conor McGregor. It was his first loss since 2005. He had won 18 straight fights, including 10 WEC/UFC title defenses, and he got it all ended in 13 seconds in a knockout against Conor McGregor. Is there going to be a title fight letdown for Aldo? There could be. He seems to be still talking about Conor. Obviously, I understand that. He wants to get back in there and prove that wrong, but he has a hell of a challenge in front of him. And if he's focused too much on Conor, he might not get the opportunity to get back there. Now, Edgar, you look at what he's brought to the table, especially in rematches. He's had 5 rematches overall in his career. He has 3 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. That only lost a very controversial defeat against Benson Henderson that many people felt he won. Keep in mind, when they fought the first time, it was Frankie's first cut to 145. Welcome to the division. Here's the champion, the best there is on the planet, 145. That's a heck of an introduction. He has won 5 fights since losing to Aldo, which was actually a 3-fight skid where he lost to Benson Henderson twice and then Jose Aldo. So he's really picked it up. He had that big knockout of Chad Mendes. He's been very impressive. He has lost 3 straight title fights, but they have been title fights where he's been right in, and he certainly is motivated. Physically, Aldo 1 inch taller, 2 inch reach advantage. He is 5 years younger, so all the stats physically are in Aldo's favor. Now, their first fight took place at UFC 156 early in 2013. Aldo has gone 3-1 since. It's at Frankie Edgar 5-0. Statistics from that matchup: Aldo actually got the better of the volume strikes, 76-60, and for significant strikes for the champion. Edgar landed 2 takedowns. Aldo didn't land any. But if you look at the numbers, they're a little bit telling here beyond just 76-60. Aldo started very strong, got the better of the exchanges in the opening 2 rounds, landed 40 significant strikes to just 12 for Frankie Edgar. But over rounds 3, 4, and 5, Frankie really took over and outlanded the champion 48-36. And that's a lot of the story is how does Aldo hold up in the second half of matchups? And that was what Frankie was looking to exploit, and he did, just not enough. When you look at how the first fight played out, we saw not a ton of kicks early on from Jose Aldo, but once he started to land, he was doing a lot of damage, and they were probably one of his most effective weapons. Aldo had a lot of success timing Edgar early. Every time Frankie came in, Aldo was landing counters, a nice straight right, working the uppercut right down the middle, very effective. Edgar's speed advantage that he had at 155, and of course I picked Aldo in that first fight. Edgar's speed advantage didn't really seem to be there at 145, and that's certainly something that took away from his effort. He struggled to get in range early on, as Aldo was simply faster and longer early in that fight. Aldo showed a very stiff left jab. Again, as I said, once he started to open up with the kicks, he had a lot more success. He buckled Edgar, took away some of his movement, even though Frankie really persevered through that damage he suffered. When Frankie did look for takedowns, Aldo stuffed some early singles, but Frankie was able to land some strikes off of failed takedown attempts, and when he did take Aldo down later in the fight, Jose popped up very quickly. But what we did see is Aldo started to breathe a lot harder later in that fight. Frankie started to land some leg kicks. He was moving his head off center. He was finding his groove. He was landing more. He was really mixing things up and getting the better of Aldo. But Aldo's strikes, again, the impact was bigger for the champion in that matchup. Frankie was hitting him more later in that fight. Aldo was still doing more damage. Now, when you look in the fights after that, we saw Mendes used a lot of leg kicks versus Jose Aldo and had some success. And he also, using his Edgar, had some success as well. Aldo needs to batter Frankie early with leg kicks and take away that movement and slow him down, not let him put that pace on him early. They are some of his best weapons, and if he's confident he can stay on his feet, he needs to let those go. With Aldo, as when he slows down, he tends to slip into counter mode, and that's what Frankie's going to feast upon if a slow Aldo, a tired Aldo, is trying to sit back and just kind of ride out the fight. And I think that's what Frankie's going to look to do, is again push him and push him hard. Aldo's took a lot of damage in that Mendes fight. Mendes hit him a lot. His durability is a question mark. He's taken a lot more damage in recent matchups than he had pretty much most of his career. Of course, the devastating knockout against Conor McGregor, what's the impact of that? When Aldo fought Mendes, he was much more flat-footed than when he fought Frankie Edgar, not bouncing as well. He was much more hittable in that matchup. I think Edgar's going to find more success when he uses angles, when he comes forward but not in a linear fashion. When he pushes, I think he's going to use a lot more kicks in this matchup and use that forward pressure to really back Aldo up. Edgar has looked much better in recent fights. He took out Chad Mendes, that stiff left. He's looked like he's acclimatized himself to 145 pounds. He's had roughly 17 rounds trying to compete in this weight class. He's better prepared mentally and physically. We know what he's capable of doing in rematches. I think Aldo's going to suffer a little bit from that title fight letdown. He's not focused enough, focusing too much on Conor McGregor. Less confident in his chin, maybe coming off that knockout. The damage factor's piling up. I think he could be slowing down a bit. He certainly looks slower in the Chad Mendes matchup. I think Edgar's going to push him early. He's going to land more leg kicks. He's going to keep moving. He's going to land short combinations in tight. And as Aldo starts to slow down, then Frankie's really going to push him. Look for some takedowns for Frankie just to set up his strikes with takedown attempts, knowing he's not going to land them, but certainly attack off the break. Eventually, I think Frankie's either going to land something big or he's going to overwhelm him as Aldo gets tired. And my prediction is Frankie Edgar to defeat Jose Aldo by TKO. And the title fights just keep coming. We now move to the women's bantamweight division as the newly crowned Miesha Cupcake Tate, the women's bantamweight champion, 18 wins and 5 losses, coming off her victory over Holly Holm, takes on the 4th-ranked title challenger Amanda the Lioness Nunes with a current record of 12 wins and 4 losses. Now, this is Tate's first title defense, for the UFC. Her first title defense of her Strikeforce title after she took it from Marloes Coenen was against Ronda Rousey, which she lost. Is Rousey still a distraction? Miesha's still talking about her in the media, not talking about Holly Holm hardly at all. She needs again to focus here and realize there is a very tough challenge at hand. Nunes has been working for this opportunity her whole life. She is very much motivated coming into this. Her run has not been perfect to the title. She lost to Kat Zingano at UFC 178, but she has got the wins needed to get in position to challenge for the title. Physically, the challenger, 2 inches taller, 4-inch reach advantage, and she is 2 years younger. Now, Nunes is a BJJ black belt, brown belt in judo, 9 wins by knockout overall, 2-1 in fights ended by submission, and 1-1 on the scorecards, which she's actually coming off her first decision victory. 2 losses by knockout as well. Now, when you look at the challenger's record in fights based on length, it's very interesting. Amanda Nunes, 9-1 in fights ended inside the opening round, but she is 3-3 in anything that goes beyond the first 5 minutes. We saw her dominate Kat Zingano early and then get dominated late and get stopped in that matchup. Against Shevchenko in their last fight, Nunes took the first 2 rounds. They were kind of uneventful, but she was certainly getting the better of the majority of the action. But then Shevchenko took over round 3. Nunes was clearly tired, took some damage, and lost that last round. And again, that reared her ugly head. The cardio issues certainly reared their ugly head. Now for Tate, she is incredibly durable. 10 of her last 11 fights have gone 3 rounds or more, and in multiple fights she has come back after struggling early. Obviously, Holly Holm coming back to submit her late. She had a very rough start against Sarah McMahon and came back to win that fight. She hung in with Ronda Rousey in that matchup and went the furthest anyone has gone with her. Holly Holm excluded, I guess, in that scenario. For Tate, she's certainly not perfect. She got hurt by McMahon, faces a much more dangerous and powerful striker in Amanda Nunes in this fight, so she has to be careful when exchanging. But Miesha Tate is at her best on the mat. She took Holm down twice and ultimately finished her, dominated Jessica Ai on the floor, took Kat Zingano down multiple times and had a lot of success early in that fight. That was actually a flip scenario where she was good early and faded late. But at the same time, she struggled with strong grapplers. Rin Nakai took her down 3 times. Carmouche took her down 5 times in a fight that a lot of people, including myself, who picked Liz Carmouche to win that, thought Liz Carmouche got the short end of the stick in the decision scenario. For Nunes, she's a kind of a mixed bag. She might look for takedowns. We saw her take Kat Zingano down move to a dominant position. Had a lot of success beating her up. Same thing against Jermaine Durandami. Took her out actually in that matchup. She's very strong. She's hard to get off once she gets on top of you. Huge ground and pound. She can posture up. She can do a ton of damage and finish fights. When she fought McMahon, she had a lot of success defending those early takedown attempts, which she's going to have to face here against Miesha Tate. She hurt McMahon, eventually scored the submission. Shevchenko was a fighter who looked for some clinch opportunities, and Nunes took her down. But also, Shevchenko had some success putting her on the mat later in that fight. And, we did see it. They talked about how Amanda Nunes moved to ATT after the Zingano loss and looked to improve her cardio, and that apparently was the case in her last fight. But if you look how that match played out, Shevchenko did not push the pace early. Was very tentative in that the early action. Allowed Nunes to sit back and pace herself and be patient and conserve her energy. The second round, Nunes was on top and not throwing a ton of heat Shevchenko's way, but it certainly worked in her favor as far as conserving her energy. We saw a lot of movement out of Nunes, light on her feet, but she throws a lot of single strikes, no real setup, and Tate should be able to see the majority of them coming. She swings big, and if she does that, it's going to tap her energy. And again, I said she was tired in the 3rd round. And look for, with Miesha Tate, she's improving her striking, she's improving her wrestling, she's a very hard worker, and it's her durability and heart that really show up. Look for Tate to push Nunes early, grapple with her, really tire her out, force takedown attempts, force her to work and defend. As long as Tate doesn't take damage and get finished in the opening round, I really think this is her fight to win. I haven't been impressed with Nunes when she gets put on her back. I think Tate can put her there early on, hold her down, wear her out. I think Tate, again, forces her to work early, takes over in a close fight early, takes over in rounds 2 and 3 if it goes that far. Look for Tate to do damage and force Nunes to give up position, and my prediction is Miesha Tate to defeat Amanda Nunes by submission. I'm going to say a rear naked choke or arm triangle. Co-main event time, and the beast is back. The former UFC heavyweight champion, took the promotion by storm. Brock Lesnar, 5 wins and 3 losses. Takes on the 8th-ranked Mark the Super Samoan Hunt, 12 wins, 10 losses, and 1 draw on his record. Now, this is a return fight for Brock Lesnar. He last fought in the UFC in 2011 at UFC 141, where he was dispatched by Alistair Overeem. Shortly thereafter announced his apparently temporary retirement. It was his first fight after losing to Cain Velasquez. He returned to action after his terrible bout with diverticulitis and some health issues. And now he's returning here. For Hunt, he has fought 9 times since Brock last entered the cage. He has fought 3-1 in that span. He was 1-6 heading into that 8 fight run that got him in a title contention and took him away from being a heavyweight joke to being one of the most popular heavyweights on the roster. Now for Lesnar, you look at this matchup and you say, Lesnar, he came back. They couldn't give him a squash opponent. They had to give him an interesting opponent that meant something, but had enough area of vulnerability that Brock could potentially exploit it with his wrestling and make it not a win where it's like, yeah, we all know they let him fight, some random jobber and, CM Punk style. Sorry, Mickey Gall, no offense, but, some random guy that they knew he was going to beat. No, they had to give him somebody that, like Mark Hunt, who had an area that Brock could potentially exploit. But can he? Before we get to that, Lesnar 5 inches taller. He'll have a 9-inch reach advantage. He's also 3 years younger. And they should be both close to 265 pounds when the fight goes down. Certainly Brock will be. So the big question is, first and foremost, is Lesnar 100% healthy? He claims he is. He claims he came back too soon after his bout with diverticulitis and certainly wasn't where he needed to be. Now he feels he's healthy after taking some time off, going back to the WWE and wrestling. And he feels he's returning for his own reasons as well. He's not coming back to satisfy the fans or anything else. He just wants to come back and fight. The second question is, even if he is healthy, how does Brock deal with getting punched in the face? Especially by Mark Hunt, the one-hitter-quitter king. Mark Hunt has massive power and the ability to deliver it effectively with one punch. Brock Lesnar has never dealt well with being punched in the face. A lot of us don't like it. Brock is one of those people. We saw it against Cain Velasquez. We saw it against Shane Carwin. If Mark Hunt hits him, what is Brock going to do? Even against Alistair Overeem, before Overeem hit him, you could see Brock was very tentative in the exchanges. He's not a striker, he's a wrestler. That's where his domain of dominance is. If he can't get there, he is a fish out of water for the most part. When he fought, as he was very hesitant against Overeem, he wouldn't commit to the takedowns. He had a couple of opportunities to get in there. He had a single leg that he was looking for, but he certainly could not get in there and do it. He was reaching, standing very straight up and down. Every time Overeem motioned towards him or threw a feint his way, Brock was tensing up and reacting to it, and you could tell he was very uncomfortable. His primary weapon was a nice jab. He was flashing a couple of leg kicks. Brock has power, but again, he struggles with distance when striking, and it makes it harder to close the gap when he's looking to wrestle because he's so uncomfortable in that position. For Mark Hunt, we all know what Mark Hunt's about. He has power. He knows how to do it. He knows how to hit guys. He knows how to put guys away. He has very hard leg kicks, both the body and the legs. We saw Overeem target the body to put Brock Lesnar down. But that's something I would advise against with Mark Hunt. Do not give Lesnar any opportunity to take you down. Don't give him an appendage that's going to allow him to close the distance and put you on your back. Hunt throws a nice left jab straight right. He'll also throw that left jab and come with a left hook when fighters are least expecting it. He only needs one clean shot to change the complexion of a fight or pretty much end a fight. And people are pointing to the one fight that stands out as far as Mark Hunt is concerned. Stipe Miocic took him down with a single leg and had a lot of success from top position. But Mark Hunt, especially early when he was fresh, gave him a lot of trouble. Fended off some takedowns, got back up very effectively. Even when Stevie controlled the position and did damage, Mark used a nice underhook to get back up. It was taking his toll and tiring him out, but we still see Hunt for the short period of time can get back to his feet. One thing with Hunt, physically he's an odd shape. He does a really nice job of rolling his body with takedown attempts, which makes it hard to control. And I don't like the way he gave up his body against Stipe, but against Brock Lesnar, I think that could be effective if he can get his knees under him and get back up as quickly as possible and take Brock out of a position he's not comfortable in. Now, if Brock can get him down and keep him down, he certainly can wear him out. He certainly can stop him with top position pressure. And if he tires him out, he will become far less effective. Mark Hunt will be in the second half, in the second round of a fight, when looking to knock him out. The way I look at it here is Brock won't have improved his striking, and time away, the amount of time he spent away from competition and from training, it's not going to be beneficial. It can't be. Mark Hunt is simply, there's just too much going on in his favor here. I think he's going to circle away, and we saw Robin Black did an excellent breakdown. He talked about circular motion, taking away Brock's forward push and that bull rush, not allowing him to line him up and shoot forward. I think we're going to see Hunt use a lot of feints and fakes to keep Brock guessing and reacting and keeping his timing off. And that real threat of the power is going to make it very difficult for Brock to push forward and afraid of getting tagged. Obviously, if Brock gets in on Mark and gets him down and keeps him there, different story. But I think we don't see that scenario play out. I think Hunt shooks off a couple takedown attempts and lands something big. And my prediction is Mark Hunt to defeat Brock Lesnar by knockout. Now, after all of those fantastic fights, we still have another huge matchup on the table. Headlining UFC 200 is the UFC's light heavyweight title fight as the champion, Daniel D.C. Cormier, 17-1-0, takes on the number one ranked fighter and interim champion, Johnny Bones Jones, the former champion, with a current record of 22 wins and 1 loss. Now, this is a rematch that's a long time in the making. They originally met at UFC 182, and then after John Jones won that fight, the rematch was pushed to UFC 197. It was canceled and now rescheduled for this fight here. For DC, he has wins over Alexander Gustafsson and Rumble Johnson since fighting John Jones. So basically the two other top dogs in the division, barring Glover to share as well. 2 big wins for DC. For John Jones in his return fight, he defeated Ovince St. Preux. Now for Jones, he is 5 inches taller, will have a 12-inch reach advantage, and he is 8 years younger. So those are some big numbers, all favoring Johnny Bones. Statistically, in their first matchup, 92 significant strikes landed for Jones, only 58 for Cormier. Jones landed 3 of his 5 takedown attempts. Cormier 1 for 8. So you certainly see the stats favoring John Jones in that fight. And I actually picked Daniel Cormier in that matchup. I thought he could grind things out and shock people, and unfortunately he didn't do enough of it. We'll see if that holds true here. In their first fight, Cormier looked to get in close and kept pushing forward right from the onset of the matchup. Jones was using a lot of kicks to do damage and establish distance. He was kicking the arms and shoulders to really, maybe do some, slow him down and take some of that thump out of Cormier's striking. Cormier, though, was having a lot of trouble closing that gap, and when he did land strikes, it was right at the end of the punch where they weren't as impactful. His corner kept encouraging him to use a lot of fakes to set up his strikes, set up his wrestling. It just wasn't there for Cormier on that night. For him to be effective, and we saw in that matchup where he was effective, he had to get in close, right on the inside, and throw a lot of strikes in a hurry, uppercut, clinch up that, and just land short punches and do damage. Jones, though, was flipping the script on him and obliging him in a lot of scenarios, closing in on Cormier, clinching up with him on the wall, really slowed Daniel down. Jones used a lot of elbows in close, used a lot of leverage using his height, and really had a lot of success from that position. Cormier seemed to be slowing down in the third round. And his wrestling, Cormier's wrestling was not there. He always seems to have that to fall back on, and that was not the case here. He couldn't finish takedowns early on. Jones landed a couple of takedowns early in the fourth round, where DC simply looked tired and couldn't defend. Cormier did land a late takedown, but early added up to nothing. Jones got up very quickly. Overall, in the latter half of the fight, Jones was a much, much busier fighter and pulled away, especially starting in the third round, I would say. He pulled away in that fight where it was close early. Since then, when Cormier fought Gustafsson, which is a very good comparison, not just because Jones fought Gustafsson, because he's a long fighter. Cormier landed a takedown early, had a lot of success putting Gus on the mat and kept him there in that opening round. But ultimately, what we saw was Gus landed some strikes in round 2, scored some takedowns of his own, and was getting the better of some of the exchanges. Cormier started swinging big with strikes. He, again, was more effective inside against the long-rangey fighter, getting in, using those short uppercuts and really busting Gustafsson up at short range. But he was exposing himself looking for power punches at distance. The big difference between the Gus fight and the Jones fight for DC is that John Jones is able to defend against the wrestling of Cormier. And because he's able to defend against the wrestling, he has more weapons at his disposal when he's striking. He doesn't worry about kicking and getting taken down. He could get taken down, but he seems to be very confident in his ability to deal with that situation, get back up, so he can throw more strikes, especially those kicks to manage distance. Gustafsson threw some knees, and they were ill-advised because they did lead to takedown opportunities for Cormier to really take him out of his position. Additionally, Jones could use that clinch position. For Gus, if he got in the clinch position with Cormier, he was getting the worst of it. John Jones very capable of shutting Cormier down and landing strikes on the inside. Now, John Jones, a lot of people pointed to his fight with OSP saying he looked rusty, but I felt, he did look a little rusty, coming off a long layoff and a long return. I also felt it looked like the type of fight where he was looking to try and get the feel back for how he was, back in the cage. He wanted to go 5 rounds. He didn't want to have a first-round finish and say, I've had a grand total of 2.5 minutes of action since since I returned, and now I'm headed back to fight Daniel Cormier. He got 5 rounds in, get that feel back, get comfortable back in the cage. For this matchup, DC has to find a way to get on the inside with consistency. I keep saying that, but that really is his method of winning this fight. Stay there without taking damage, which is difficult, and deal out as much damage as he possibly can do. Land those uppercuts, land those short strikes, get some elbows in there if possible, and maybe use those strikes to set up a close-range takedown opportunity. The unfortunate thing is Jones can hurt him in close. Jones can hurt him, he can hurt him in close just as much as DC can hurt Jones in close, but Jones can also hurt him at range where DC is not going to have a lot of success hurting him out there. And Jones was getting the better of the wrestling. Gus took DC down multiple times, and that's something that if Jones can do, that takes away, if it's a stalemate, well, then it comes down to the striking. If Jones has the wrestling advantage, well, then DC is really going to be in a hole as he was in the first fight. Jones's gas tank, could it be an issue? The weight cutting apparently, or the weightlifting has not been a factor in his training camp, so hopefully that's not going to show up. DC, I think, is going to have his moments in this fight, but simply he's not going to have enough of them. Jones, I think he's going to manage the distance very well. He's going to score at range. He's going to land strikes in the clinch again. I think he's going to land some more takedowns and look to really beat Cormier up in the mat. Change things up. He's not going to do the same thing he did in the last fight. I think we're going to see him shooting more takedowns and putting Cormier on his back earlier in this fight. I think very well Jones could take a decision because Cormier's a hard guy to finish, but I think he's going to wear DC down. DC, we saw him rolling to his stomach a couple times when Gus took him down. Against Jon Jones, that's an absolute mistake. And I think he's going to try that one too many times in this matchup. And I think Jones is going to catch him. So my prediction is Jon Jones to defeat Daniel Cormier by submission and become the new and once again light heavyweight champion. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 200. I had talked about doing a studio show for this episode, but with all of the events, it's just in the short order we are dealing with them. It's just too much. I hopefully will do it for an event where it lines up, where it's a big card, and I have a couple weeks or even an extra week leading up to the event where I can do it. I still have UFC Fight Night 91 to prepare for, plus the bet packs. And the bet packs, $12. Certainly consider buying them. $54 for the next 6 cards, which saves you $18. Again, all my customers, I appreciate you very much. Enjoy the fights, guys. They're going to be fantastic. I hope my predictions are as reflect the amount of work I've put into them and the amount of hours I've spent up late at night compiling them. And I cannot wait. As of right now, it is Monday night, and I cannot wait for Thursday to kick around and get this show on the road. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and take care. I'll see you after the bell.